Hello everyone and welcome to my haircut. As always, my name is Haircut and today I got a haircut. So let's just jump into it here. I'm gonna play some 10 plus O. Once again, see if we can continue gaining rating and climbing that rating ladder. As you do. I just finished playing in the Lichess Bundesliga, which was always a good time. And yeah, we'll see what we got here. Game is starting. Always a good time. We have knight f6 g6, and it's not a third game in the Grunfeld for the YouTube, but just a normal King's Indian defense. This time with knight a6. And yeah, there's a few things you can do with this knight a6 move. What do I want to play? I think bishop b3 is a pretty reasonable move here still. As it is in the knight d7 line. Considering doing some other things as well. Could just take, but taking is boring. Taking is so boring. Maybe queen c2. I'm gonna go bishop e3. We'll see how this works out. Knight g4 is pretty common. Queen e8 seems pretty common as well. I'm gonna go h3 and just stop knight g4 for the moment. I might be hanging my e-pawn actually. I think I am just hanging my e-pawn here, which is rather unfortunate. Yeah. I don't know. Probably not quite in the right mindset to play 10 plus 0 just yet, coming off of all these blitz games. But that's okay. That's okay. It's gonna happen sometimes. So this pawn is just free. I can take and play bishop f3. I can also play knight d5 maybe. I'm gonna take and play bishop f3. Try and get some active bishops in exchange for my pawn. I'm gonna follow this up with knight b5, I think, which hangs the b pawn, but like, does it hang the b pawn? I don't know. Maybe rook b1 is a move worth playing. Now I do have a response to knight c5, and I can even consider just pushing b4 outright. Okay, knight c5, I was thinking I would play b4, and yeah, I see no reason not to. I'm not super afraid of the move knight e4. I think I can play something like queen to c2. My opponent's trying to trade. I obviously don't want to, but knight b5 was my intention anyways. a6, I guess I'm going knight a3. I suppose I'm going knight a3, which doesn't look ideal, but after c5, maybe I'll put this guy on the c4 square. Hanging my e-pawn seems bad, but now like this bishop is pretty useful, and usually this bishop isn't that useful when this pawn is still on e4. My opponent might consider doing some sort of clown push, like f5 and f4. Really though, as long as Peter here can find a way to develop this bishop, I think black should just be better. Queen c2 seems tempting. Maybe knight g5 is my opponent's intention with queen d8. Maybe that's the intention here. c5 seems like a pretty reasonable move. Pretty reasonable. Could see c5 being a good move. Just gonna play it. Opening up the b file would be great. And if knight g5, I think I'm just gonna capture here. Knight takes bishop, I'll just take here. If queen takes, I get rook d1 with tempo. And then I'm down a pawn, and my opponent has the two bishops, but I don't know, I have an open position. I think d takes c was a little bit of a mistake. Now the b file is open. My knight can step to c4 in many cases. And I don't see why I should be worse anymore. Okay, knight d4, I can take. Probably not so interested in trading this bishop for this knight, especially with the board so wide open. So I'll take b7. And I'm very much back in the game here. Pretty sloppy opening with hanging my pawn like that, but Got the pawn back. My pieces have reasonable squares, aside maybe from this knight, you could argue. But I'm hopeful one day this will come back to c2 or c4. And from there, even greener pastures. Bishop e6 would be annoying, but it hangs a rook. So sort of lucking out with the bishop e6 idea. Yeah, just captures, I'll take back. Knight f5 could be awkward, but I think bishop f4 is a pretty decent square for this piece. Pretty decent square. Now I don't really see how my opponent's going to stop a move like knight c4. Maybe they'll go queen d5 just outright and sacrifice this pawn. Doesn't seem like a bad idea. You get pressure on a2 as well. And probably this move of queen d5 is the move I should be careful of. I would love to play knight c4 here if I can. If I can play it, I absolutely should play this move. But maybe maybe queen d5 is just a scary idea. Considering going queen a4, the point of rook d1 to follow. Something I'm considering. Queen a4, queen d5, rook d1 for example. Maybe rook d8. Maybe knight e2 check is somehow okay, although I doubt it. Knight c4, queen d5, I have knight b6, right? Takes, I take, that should be good. Well then, I can play knight c4, so I should play knight c4, right? Just get this knight into the game. If this knight lands on d6, I think I'm pretty happy. I think I should be better there. d6 is a pretty good square. Maybe knight b5 will chase it away, but even knight b6 here is just quite powerful, right? In fact, potentially winning some material. I'm receiving a call. I will ignore it for the moment. That's how much I care about you guys. Ignoring my phone. Ignoring the phone call. All for you. Can you believe how much I care? How dedicated I am to this YouTube channel? It's honestly insane. Okay. Knight d7 was going to be my plan here. But I could also just take, go rook a7, and like I'm just snagging the a-pawn, right? This a-pawn is just indefensible. You can't even counterattack on the c-pawn, except maybe you can with bishop f8. Knight d7 is the alternative, by the way. Knight d7 is the only reason why I haven't taken yet. I could also just ignore this actually, go rook c1 or rook b1. Rook c1 would be the safest, just with the idea of defending here. If rook d3, rook a7, rook a3, am I happy? My opponent gets to defend their a-pawn for the moment. For the moment, they would get to defend. So why not knight d7? First of all, it doesn't really make a threat, but I was going to follow it up with something like rook b8. It might allow something like bishop d4. This is one of those positions where it really feels like I should have some sort of idea to just kind of win, but it's not the easiest to actually find. I think all these options are perfectly fine for white, but it's just a question of if I'm going to be able to find the best one. So let's calculate. Rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook a7. If check, I just go here. If check, I go g3. Okay, so rook d8, rook d8, rook a7. Bishop f8 counterattacks on my c5 pawn. I can play knight d7 there, bishop e7. Or I can just take. But I don't think I'm actually better there. I think bishop f8 is a big enough of a problem that I'm not actually any better in that position. Rook c1, I was saying rook d3 to try to defend. So let's say rook a7, rook a3. There I was considering doing something like rook c2. But maybe something like rook a5 is putting some pressure again on my c-pawn. So this leaves me with knight d7. I couldn't find any real particular reason why I didn't like this move. But it feels just like a strange move, right? It feels like a very strange move. I'm going to play knight d7 though. Let's say knight d7, rook e8, rook b1, rook e7. Knight b8 is a weird idea, but potentially good. potentially very good. Yeah, I like this. I like this idea. I'm gonna go for it. Knight b8, just straight attacking the c pawn, right? In fact, forking the pawns, even better. Even better, knight b8 with a fork. Okay, yeah, I saw this and I was gonna go knight b8 here, right? Knight b8. And if I'm taking the c pawn, it might be close to game over. If I take the c pawn and my c pawn survives, then it's gonna be a very bad day. Gonna be a very bad day for the black pieces. Notably, if this rook leaves the back rank, I'm not really without threats of my own, right? Rook b8, bishop h6 ideas, knight c6, knight e7 ideas as well. I think I was correct in choosing this line. Although maybe there's takes, rook d1, king h2, bishop e5, and if g3, then just trading the knights. But then I still go rook back to b6, and one of these pawns is going to fall. It looks like this is the line my opponent's going for, but just shouldn't be good. It just shouldn't be good. Rook b6 here. Right, even rook c8. Is rook c8 better? The reason rook c8 would be better is because rook b6 may allow knight d8, whereas rook c8 would definitely be taking the c pawn as opposed to the a pawn. But maybe I want the option, right? I think I want the option. Why do I want the option? Because if I go rook c8, maybe rook a1 somehow. If rook c6, rook a2. Obviously rook a1 feels a little bit suspicious with this idea, but potentially they might get away with it. So this way, if rook a1, I can take the a pawn and defend. If rook d5, I can take the c pawn. And again, defend the pawn that they attack, while also capturing their pawn. Looks pretty good. And this is one of those cases where a pawn advantage is actually going to be very, very relevant, right? Because it's a passed pawn on the queen's side, far away from the king's. And especially with the bishop versus the knight here, I think that's going to end up with a very substantial advantage. These pawns are difficult to stop with the knight, whereas the bishop can sort of influence the board from afar. Now that I've captured the a pawn, I really don't mind trading a2 for c6, because my c5 pawn is already so far advanced, and the c5 pawn is also sort of in the way of me promoting this a pawn. So yeah, just thinking here, probably a4 is never a bad move. If they attack my c pawn, I can take on c6. Rook d5 feels a little bit optimistic, because by removing this rook here, trying to be, sort of quasi-active, you're actually sort of limiting your rook's potential to get behind the passed pawn. Right, now you have to go rook d3, or else I'm just pushing very, very, very quickly. Okay, yeah, rook d1 is just worse because you can't go rook a1 because of the check. I'm happy to go a6 now. And yeah, how to convert this now? How to convert? Be great if I could get my king in the game. Actually, I can just go here, and this knight can't really move. Same if I go here, actually, right? So bishop g5, f6, rook d8, takes, not ideal. Rook d8, king d7. Maybe my opponent gets to survive. All right, new plan. I'm gonna go g4 and go take all the kingside pawns with my king. My opponent's pieces are pretty frozen for the moment. It's a little bit awkward. A little bit awkward for them to deal with. Maybe king d5 was the best try. I think I play f4. I can do this as well, by the way. This is not a ridiculous idea by any stretch. Oh, yeah, I should have done this in the first place. I'm sorry. I think this is just great. I put the bishop on b8, I play a7, right? Maybe not. Maybe not. This endgame is not as easy as it looks to convert. Not as easy as it may seem at first glance. Right, like king d5, knight e6, knight takes c5 is sort of a difficult plan to stop. Sort of a difficult plan to stop, actually. I'm thinking I might go h4 and h5. And go after the h-pawn. Seems like a reasonable winning attempt, right? I'm gonna start with rook b8. And we'll see what my opponent chooses. Yeah, king d7. I'll go here now, and I should be able to pick up the h-pawn with check. Well, not with check, but should be able to check and then pick up the h-pawn. And I think that's a favorable trade for me. H-pawn for, okay, if I go here, rook takes, f4, king c7, a7, king b7 takes. A little bit unnecessary, maybe. I think I like it, to be honest. Think I like it. Perhaps a little bit unnecessary, but doesn't seem bad. Maybe this pawn is actually hanging now. Okay, this I'm happy with. This I'm happy with. Take first, so there's no rook h4 picking up the pawn. Now it's kind of unfortunate for my opponent because they moved their king all the way over here to try to stop my pawn, and then I gave up my a-pawn for the h-pawn, and it's a long road back, right? It's a long road back. Picking up the knight, at the very least, which should be enough. Should be enough here. Knight g5, I take it. Then rook h4 is legal, but can go h7. Yeah, okay. That's not gonna get it done. Rook g8 wins by force. I'm pre-moving it. Can't stop me. You just can't stop me. Literally pre-moved. Alright, that'll be the match. Good game to Peter. Let's request a little computer analysis here. I really blew it in the opening, but made a pretty good recovery. Apparently this has actually been played before. Bishop takes d4 is just advantage to white. If knight takes e4, then you take on g7, king g7, queen d4, and this is quite strong. I stumbled into a little bit of a tricky trap line, but after knight takes d4, yeah, black is just better with this extra pawn. Actually, it's close to equality. I do have some compensation. Like, these bishops weren't nothing. After queen d8, white might actually be better. Rook b1, knight c5, b4, knight e6. Wow, it actually wanted me to take on e6? No. Alright, it's apparently an option. I think knight b5 is fine, just putting on some pressure. Okay, I thought knight a7 was good, but knight a7, I thought my knight might get trapped. Ah, you can't even play that because I take here. Okay, knight a3, and black is definitely better. Yeah, this knight just doesn't belong here. Queen d8 was a good move. C5 was a good move. This was apparently all pretty correct. I get my pawn back now, but apparently my opponent could have just played something like knight e6 and had a very solid position. The pawn is actually safer on c7 than c6, I guess. Yeah, here I think I was playing pretty decently. Apparently all the moves that I was like suggesting were pretty okay. Rook takes d8 was fine. It likes rook d to d7 as well, which I didn't mention, but I did sort of briefly consider. Knight d7 is apparently also okay. All of those moves like +2 to +0.4. This move apparently loses, knight b8. What? This loses somehow? Bishop e5 here. Ah, the threat is stronger than the execution, as they always teach you, right? The threat is stronger than the execution. Dang. Would have lost the game if bishop e5. I just can't stop rook e1, and if knight d7, then bishop c7. Ouch. That's just brutal. That's just brutal. Okay, well, that was missed, and now this is actually just equality if bishop d4. Interesting. But bishop b8, and then I do win this pawn, and now it's actually just a winning endgame. Let's see how the engine rates my technique here. Yeah, h4, it didn't like because of h5. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. If you let it think, it's all the same. h8, takes, and now it's just busted. Just busted. Yeah, looks like a chess game. Not quite as bad as I thought. There was that one blip in the middle where, like, I thought I was being very clever with knight b8, but apparently it just loses to bishop e5. Would have been disaster. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, though. As always, let me know if you liked the video. Let me know if you want to see more just rapid games like this. And that'll do it for the day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.